What's going on, guys? It's your boy, man. If you click this video, you're in the right place, man. You want to know how to make $1,000 pretty much selling anything. I'm really talking about products, and different things like that. I'm not a guru. This is not a scam. I'm a person. As I am Candle Co. My name is Amar Smith. I am a small business candle owner. And I'm just telling you from what I've learned from my experience in the field. This is going to be no edits, no frills, no none of that. I'm going to tell you how I do it. And you can kind of just take what you need and leave what you don't. I hope that this video is helpful for you. Without further ado, let's get into it. So like I said, man, this is a video about how to make $1,000, pretty much selling anything, but really product based. And I'm going to show you the way that I do it. Just off the bat, I'm not rich. Like I said, I'm not a guru. I work a regular job like some of you guys, but I know that everybody's strapped for money. I know that some people have small businesses that they're thinking about making. They want to know how they can kind of get money fast in this time. We're going to talk about it. So like I said before, I am a candle owner. My business is As I Am Candle Co. Been making candles now about 6 years. If you want to check out my stuff, feel free. That's it on social media. But that's not what you're here for. You're here to know how to get $1,000 in your business, selling anything, whatever it is. And I'm gonna tell you the truth. I made a video about this in shorts, but the topic is pop-ups, local events, and markets. That's all I'm gonna talk about. If you don't like pop-ups, you don't like local events, you don't like markets, this ain't the video for you. But for those who are still here, drop a thumbs up right now. Let's get into it. So I've been doing candles now, like I said, probably about 5 or 6 years. Pop-ups is probably the main source of income for me. I done another video, how to get your first 100 sales, where I kind of talked about pop-ups and person to person. I mainly make my money from candles, pop-ups, online sales, and then like people to people. So like friends, family, and stuff like that. One thing I will always say is when you're choosing a business idea, choose a hustle idea, choose something that not just something that you want, but something that can be beneficial to other people, right? Because we all want to buy things that we need. We all want to buy things that we like. We all want to buy things that we want. The good thing about candle business is that people want candles, right? The bad thing about candles sometimes is that it's more of a luxury item. So unless you're like really love candles or you're really invested in candles, you might not buy candles. So that's the first thing I recommend is finding a business or an idea to where it's like, okay, I know that people want this. It could be shirts, it could be candles, it could be 3D printing, it could be, snacks. I've seen people do freeze dried fruits and stuff like that. I've seen people do a lot of things, selling old furniture, sneakers resales. It could be a gamut of things. Just kind of find an idea, hold that idea in the back of your mind, and let's go to the next part. So once I kind of get an idea in my mind, and I know that I want to get pop-ups and different things like that, kind of your idea doesn't have to be perfect, first and foremost. So get that out your mind. When I first started candles, my candles looked crazy. I might drop a picture in here. If not, you can look on my social media. You can check my other videos. It was never perfect. You know what I mean? My setup still to this day is not perfect. I usually have a table with a tablecloth on it. I set my candles up a nice way. I kind of open them up so people can kind of see and smell them. And then, that's how I kind of get the conversation going. So first I'll have a nice product, make sure, it's decent. It does what it's supposed to do. Second thing I do is I go on Facebook groups. That is the thing that I do. Facebook groups. Sometimes if you live in a certain area, you can find certain vendors who have Facebook groups, or not Facebook groups, who have social media pages who do events. So like, you might have the neighborhood pop-up. You might have a church that's doing an event. You might have a community event in your neighborhood. You might have a school event that's going on. You might be doing an event at your job. These are the things you kind of want to get involved in. But if you don't see any of those on social media, or if they're too expensive, go on Facebook groups. You know what I mean? Choose a group. I'm in Florida, so you just type in the name of your city, or type the name of your state, Texas. You know what I mean? Pop-ups, Houston pop-ups, San Antonio, and it has a lot of groups. And you kind of just go through the groups, and you filter in and filter out what you need and what you don't need, right? So for me, what I do is I started with smaller pop-ups because I wanted to get like test the waters and different things like that. I started with smaller pop-ups, and then I built my way up to bigger pop-ups. You don't have to do that. Even at the small pop-ups, I made money. Even at the big pop-ups, sometimes the smaller pop-ups, I made more money than the larger pop-ups. You know what I mean? Because at certain pop-ups, depending on where you are, even if it's not like a large foot traffic, people are there for one reason, and that's to spend the money. They're there to look, even if they don't think they're there to spend money, they're there to spend some money because they're there to look and see, okay, ooh, I like this. okay, let me circle back. You know what I mean? So people say, let me circle back. That means you kind of got them because they're gonna be there for a minute and they're looking around at different things like that. So pop-ups, Facebook, and then you kind of just apply the ones you want. I would do it based on price. So for me, if you're just starting out, I wouldn't necessarily go in and say, okay, let me go spend $150, $200 on a pop-up. Start with a pop-up that's free. Start with a pop-up that's $35. I've done some free pop-ups where I walk away with $400 or $500. You know what I'm saying? $500, $600. I think one pop-up I did like $800, almost $1,000. I only paid $75 and it was for 2 days. You know what I mean? So it's not always about the price. You know what I mean? And there have been ones that I paid $150 and I've only walked away with $600, $700, which still in the grand scheme of things is better. You know, still good, but compared to what I paid less for, I walked away with more money paying less sometimes. So get the price. Sometimes they'll say, hey, we'll do a trade-off. You know what I mean? Like you just give us one of your products and then, boom. Okay, so if you're a person that's like, okay, well, I don't have physical products. I have online products. You can kind of do that too. I do think you need a physical product, at least like a sample of it. But if you can kind of explain to people what you do, you know what I mean, that'll help. I have seen people who, they do shirts, for example, right? Or they do 3D printing. And let's do 3D printing. So a guy will have a 3D printer there. He has different objects, but he's like, hey, if you want this, I can do this, but it's going to take X amount of time, right? I see people who have shirts and the guy doesn't want to have 100,000 shirts, with different designs. So he'll have a book with all his designs in the book. He'll have a box of shirts and say, hey, which design do you want? Oh, I like this one. Okay, this is what it looks like when we're done. You know what I mean? These are the different concepts, the different markups. This is what they'll look like when they're done. You can come back in 20 minutes and your shirt will be ready. So you could do it that way if you don't have a physical product. Does that make sense what I'm saying? Or if you don't want to bring a whole bunch of products. Eventually I do want to get to where I'm making candles there, but I don't be having time for that sometimes. I'm not going to lie. So I don't do it that way. But go on Facebook groups, find them pop up, find a couple of them, and start testing them out, And then what you do is when you get your money from that pop up, you don't just, hey, okay, I got this money, I'm just going to keep it and blow it and do this. You take a little bit of it, cover whatever expenses you have, and then you do it again. You know what I mean? One thing that I also do is pop up sometimes is give out samples. So samples is a good thing because people can kind of feel what you got going on. If you do like juices and stuff like that, they can taste what you have going on. If you do food, they can taste what you got going on. If you do scents, they can smell what you have going on. So having samples is good. So, okay. So for example, all right, you got your groups. You done booked your pop-up so far, right? Now you know, okay, how do I set up? How do I prepare for this event? I'm scared. I'm nervous. First off, slow down. You don't have to be scared. You don't have to be nervous. I was that same way once as well. What you do is once you book it and stuff like that, they'll send you the information. They'll say, hey, we're doing this day, this time. What they give you everything. And then when you get there, you always have people that will kind of guide you to where you need to go. Like if you're booth 18, okay, booth 18, come over here. You know what I mean? I started out with no tent. All I had was a table, you know what I mean, and a tablecloth. I do recommend a tent if you're outside. If you're not outside, you don't need a tent. Just even if you don't have, okay, I have a setup, but I don't have a lot of money to spend on my setup. That's fine. I go to Dollar Tree. You see these flowers? Those is fake. You see this pumpkin? I did this for Halloween last year. This was like $5 at Dollar Tree. So you don't need a lot of money to, you know what I'm saying, to get a pop-up to look nice. Get you a decent tablecloth. You can get that from Dollar Tree as well. Get you some little, you know what I'm saying, depending on the season. Seasons is a good thing too. If it's summertime, maybe a beach ball, maybe, you know what I mean, some shades, just some cool little stuff to make your table look good. Another thing I do is I give things out to kids. So candy. Kids love candy. Hey, Jolly Ranchers, Christmas time candy canes. And that'll bring them in. All right. So we got our product, right? We booked our first, pop up in the group. We just went through the groups. We seen, okay, I'm open on the 17th of July, you know what I'm saying, or August. All right, I see something around that weekend. It's a Saturday. It's 4 hours. It's $30. All right, boom. I booked it. I got the information. I got the confirmation. I'm preparing my stuff. I got my knitted sweaters ready. I got 5 knitted sweaters, 6 knitted sweaters, ready to go. 10 knitted sweaters ready to go. So what I do now is I have my setup. This is kind of how I want my setup to design, blah, 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 boom, cool. So once you do that, you get to the pop-up place, you have your table, your booth set up the way that you like it. You You don't always have to be a person like, oh, hey, come in. Like, no, let people browse. Let people, you know what I'm saying, peruse. You know what I'm saying? Like, let people kind of come in and check out your setup, check out your ambiance, check out your area. And then you just start casually talking to them. Yes, there is a point where you might have to sell them a little bit, but sometimes if people like what you have, they're already convincing themselves, why should I spend this money? All you got to do is push them over the edge. You know what I mean? So for example, when I have candles, one thing I do, like I said, I set them out on the table. I have candies, I have samples. People come in. What's the saying? If she looked, she took. If you look, I got you. So if you look, oh hey, I see you looking. You come over here, smell. It's free to smell. And why they smell. I just want to let you know my candles. They're vegan. Cruelty free. It's coconut apricot wax, which is vegan and cruelty free. They don't have the parabens. They don't have the phthalates. So it's a healthier smell. I have a wood wick. You know what I'm saying? I go through my whole spiel, and then, little Johnny might be there. Be like, hey, little Johnny, what scent do you like? He be like, oh, mommy, I really like this one. And I'm like, oh, you really like that one, Johnny? Oh, okay, mommy, what you think? You think that's a good one? She's like, oh yeah, but I'm not gonna get it. Well, that's fine. You don't have to get anything. I just, I like to understand what people like. And you keep talking to them, and I say, well, mama, that's not your kind of scent. What kind of scent do you have? Oh, I like woodsy. Do you have anything woodsy? Oh, sure. Come over here. You know what I'm saying? And I just give them options, you know what I mean? And then by that point in time, they're already, to me, they're kind of convincing themselves, okay, yeah, I'm gonna get whatever this thing is, so let me just wrap it up. You know what I mean? So then it's like, okay, well, I see you looking. I know, this, I have different sizes, which is what I do, different sizes. You know what I mean? I have big, small, I have 8 ounce, 12 ounce, 14 ounces, and 16 ounces, or 16 ounces, 20 ounces, something like that. And well, what's your prices? I'm like, oh, well, don't worry about the price on the board. I say, usually I charge. And so I start out, I'm giving them a sale. So usually I say I charge 45, but today for this one, I'm doing 30. And if you don't like that, I have them in 8 ounces, 15. This is blah, blah, blah. And if the worst case scenario, I got wax melts. So it's like you have a smaller offering as well. So I think that's important, is to have smaller offering. This is why I do this, is because a lot of times when people see the first big price point, they be like, oh my gosh. So if I just had one candle that was $35, they might be like, that's too steep. But if I have 4 candles, one starting at 35 and then going down, the 35 might not seem so bad, because if I have, for me, I have a 12 ounce jar, and then I have a 16 ounce jar, or 14, 16 ounce jar, and it's like $5-8 more. So it's like, I might as well just get the bigger jar for more money. You know what I'm saying? Instead of getting the smaller jar, that's less money, unless you really just got less money. But if not, then I have smaller, you know what I'm saying, whatever. But that's just spiel. So after you do that, like I said, you kind of like networking. You make people feel comfortable. You make it natural as possible. You're selling people, but you're not trying to feel like they're being sold to. You want them to kind of feel like they've come to this decision on their own. And then if absolutely, this person's looking, they're like, I don't know. I mean, if you're a person where it's like, hey, my price is my price, you can go, that's cool. You could do that. If not, then I say, hey, usually I do this, I know that I'm doing this for 35 today. I usually do it for that. But today I'm gonna mark it down for 25. If you get it today, it's yours. You gotta do it like the people in the mall. Oh, for you, buddy, $20. And it's like everybody else paid 22. You know what I'm saying? This isn't a deal for me. But that's sometimes how you gotta look at it. So that's some ways that you can make money at a pop-up. Another way that you can make money is, like I say, I have different sizes. Bundle them together. So, for example, if you're just starting out and you want to do shirts, this is something that I struggled with at first for a long time. Is, people, you want to charge your value. But when you're first starting out, you also have to sell and make money. So sometimes you have to cut the price. You know what I mean? Because the ultimate goal is to continue to sell, to continue to make money. So, for example, if I know that I got a bundle, hey man, I'll do 2 for whatever this is. I know I usually charge 35, but it's 22 for 50. You know what I mean? Like you get 2 and all you're doing is paying $15 more for the second one instead of the full 35 that I would usually charge. Cut some deals. You got shirts, hey, 2 for 40, 2 for 30. Like, you want to sell, you want to make money, right? So for example, if you do, let's say you do 2 shirts for 35 and you sell 10, that's 350. You know what I mean? 2 shirts for 40 and you sell 10, that's $400. Now you starting to, you know what I'm saying? Now you starting to see what it is. So now you thinking in your mind, I only gotta get 10 shirts to get, or 10, 10 sales to get $400. Yes. You know what I mean? Now it's not always that cut and dry, but as long as you have people that's coming in and stuff like that, and if they looking and you just invite them in, don't force them over to, hey, you guys, you can kind of look, you know what I'm saying? If you see something you like, you can tell me about it. And then while they looking, don't just like hover over them. Oh, you like this one? This is a good one. Don't do that. You know what I mean? Just let them look and be like, oh yeah, that's this type of shirt. It's good for blah, blah, blah. Or that's this type of fabric. It's good for this. Or, I have this kind of juice and it's healthy for, what I'm saying, these different things. Sometimes go around, walk around into other people's booths, engage with them. A lot of times sellers support other sellers. I go to events sometimes with money in my pocket so I can find which event, which booth I'm going to support because we're all there to make money. You know what I'm saying? So have a good setup. Get on the groups. You know what I'm saying? Have a good little display. It doesn't have to be great. If you got shirts, just get a rack, put some hangers on there. You know what I mean? People do the thrifting thing and make it look like, oh, vintage 19. Like, you know what I'm saying? We know you got that from a thrift and you just resell it to me. But people don't care, man. It's convenient for them. You want to make the process as convenient as possible. And you just do that again. So even if you don't get 1,000 the first time, which you always want, it's okay. You know what I mean? You do it again. You do that 2 or 3 times, you're gonna get that. You know what I'm saying? You're gonna get that. 4 times, you're gonna get that. You know what I mean? Now, I have made $1,000 in a day, and this is how I did it. So if you're still here, drop a thumbs up. I should have said this was a bonus, but anyways, if you're still here, drop a thumbs up. I'm gonna tell you how I made $1,000 in a day, well, day and a half. I did allude to it earlier, but I'm gonna let you know. So one thing that I did do a pop-up that was a 2-day event, right? But one thing that I did was pause for dramatic effect. I'm just kidding. No, but one thing I did though for real was where I worked at the last time, my last previous job, I sold to people who work with me. So sometimes, I worked in a night lounge. So I was a manager at a night lounge. So these are people who see me all the time. So wherever you work, you could be in a hospital, you could be in you know what I mean, a restaurant, you could be at a schoolhouse, you could be wherever it is. There are people who are there that see you all the time and they're willing to support what you do. Ultimately, I know people say people that like you, around you, they don't support you. That's not true. Sometimes you don't have nothing that they want. You know what I mean? Like sometimes you don't have things that they want. Or maybe they really don't support you, but you might just not have something that they want. So, for example, it was one time, I think this is either Mother's Day or Valentine's Day. We were having events and stuff like that. These are customers that I see all the time, so I'm familiar with them. They didn't know that I sold candles. I never told nobody besides my staff that I sold candles because this was something that I did outside of my job. You know what I'm saying? I never told nobody that I sold candles. So when I had a candle setup, they was like, man, you sell candles too? Like they were surprised, you know what I mean? And like I said, I had my different offers. And I was like, yeah. And people was like, man, I never seen nobody sell candles in a restaurant. I never seen nobody sell candles in a lounge. It was Mother's Day, it was Valentine's Day, and I said, yeah, man, come get your girls, a $10 candle. Come get your girl this. I'm doing this kind of sale. I'm doing this. I'm doing that. And that was how I was able to get like $1,000. Really get $1,000 was just by talking to people, man. And then obviously when people start drinking and stuff like that, they, oh yeah, bro, you can have this. But it's just like, hey man, like, you got your girl something, you got your mama something, man. Like, this will be nice, man. It smell good. And then people that see you, they'll come back and they'll support again because they like the setup, they like you as a person, and they like what you do. And it's different. So this is how you can make $1,000 selling anything. You know what I mean? Pop-ups, local events. If you got any questions, drop them in the comments. I hope I did y'all a good service, man. If you like this video, just let me know. If you want to see more videos like this, let me know. Till next time, peace.